In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can very easily get up and running with a WooCommerce online store very quickly. Now, this isn't a deep dive into every single facet of WooCommerce. This is a quick start guide to get you up and running. We're going to break the video down into three different sections. The first, we're going to take a look at setting up our hosting, setting up backups, and all those kind of key things that we need to ensure we have in place. Then we're going to move on to getting things set up with WooCommerce, installing our theme that we're going to use, getting the basics in place, and how we can start to customize that to make it much more our own. Third and final, I'm going to show you how we can set up a support system and also some of the additional options that may be available if you want to go beyond the free tools we're going to cover in this specific video. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what the site is going to look like, what we're kind of working towards, and then we'll take a look at how we can start getting everything set up. So this is our starter site. As you can see, it's a clean looking modern tech kind of driven website. Great looking homepage, product listings, and all those kinds of good things. Come into any of our products. We have all the options then, the details, we can add it to our basket. We've got a full shopping cart set up, everything you'd expect to see inside WooCommerce, but all wrapped up in a really nice, modern, clean design that we can use as the basis for our overall design. You've got a full checkout and cart set up, all nice, clean and modern and fresh, the kind of things most people would expect to see. This is your shopping cart. We'll proceed to our checkout. Again, nice and clean. You've got full account setup, all the things you need from a modern online store. So now we've seen exactly what type of thing we're going to create. Let's move over to the hosting and get that first stage all set up so we can hit the ground running. So we're going to be using Kinsta today for our hosting plan, who've kindly sponsored this portion of the video. But as always, I'm going to demonstrate some of the functions that they offer as part of the hosting plan, and then you can make a more informed decision for yourself. No opinions expressed. Okay, so let's go and set this up. So first of all, we're going to hop over to the Kinsta website, link in the description, and you can see they offer managed WordPress hosting, which includes several key features, including site migrations, edge caching, security, and some additional add-ons. We'll take a look at some of those as we set things up. So then we've got a couple of plans we can choose between monthly and annual. Let's stick with the monthly for this example. You can see then this gives us the first month for free. You do have to put a credit card in, but you can cancel at any time. So you can test this out without any concerns. Underneath that shows you exactly what you're going to get for your monthly subscription fee. So we're going to get one WordPress install, 35,000 visits, etc., including a CDN. So that's included as part of this. And we've got 14 days backup retention. Always good to have backups in place. So if you want to compare the features, you can do that by simply choosing this option. This will then show you all the different plans they offer, the pricing based upon monthly or annual, and what you actually get included in any of those plans. So there we go. You can check that out. Again, like I say, I'll put the link in the description down below. So let's stick with the single site plan for our example today, and let's click Start for Free. This again will show you whether you want to choose monthly or annual. If you want to change your plan, you can do that here. And again, it also shows you what you get included, including 10 gigabytes of storage, 35,000 visits per month, and unlimited migrations. So that's pretty cool. So as you can see, I'm going to pay nothing today. So I'm going to fill out my details and go through the process of setting this up. Next, we're going to put in our credit card details, billing information, and so on. And again, you can see you will not be charged now, and we can cancel this at any time, so we can fully test it. So again, I'm going to fill out my details. There we go. After a few moments, putting my details in, I'm now ready for my first trial of Kinsta. This then takes us into our dashboard, and we can do several different things here. So we hop over and take a look at things like our WordPress sites. We can create one from here. We can request that migration, which we'll take a look at a little later. We've got static sites inside here, so we can add a new static site if we want to. Any applications, databases, and any DNS records we can set up with our domain. For now, let's just set up a basic WordPress site. Let's click on WordPress sites, create a new site, and we've got some options to install WordPress, create an empty environment, or we can clone an existing environment. Let's just choose to install WordPress for now. We'll click continue. We can give this a name, our data center location, so we can choose what we consider either to be the nearest to us, or if you have an audience that's maybe global or specific to a particular country and you want to maybe target those because that's where most of your traffic comes from, I would recommend taking a look at a data center closer to them. It's going to be more beneficial because you just end up with a faster site for your biggest part of your audience. And you can still tap into that CDN as part of your account with Kinsta anyway to optimize for the rest of the world. For our example, I'm going to choose London, UK, which is the closest to me. And as you can see, we've got enabled by default, we've got our CDN or content delivery network is set up and our edge caching. So we've got everything in place. Let's hit continue. Now we can go and give this a site title, add relevant details in to create our site for us. So let's do that. Give our admin a username. Please do not use admin here. Give it something a little bit more complicated. Next, we've got our WordPress password for the admin. Now, make sure if you do use your own password here, that you use a combination of numbers, letters, uppercase, lowercase, and symbols, and make sure it's at least 12 characters long to reduce the potential for having that hacked. It's just good practice. However, you can also just use the admin password that's been created for you. Then pop in your admin email address. Choose your language. In my case, I want English UK. You can also install WooCommerce, Yoast SEO, or Easy Digital Downloads at this point. I don't want any of those on my site, so I'm going to click on Continue. And that's going to go and create the site for us. It's pretty simple and pretty painless. A couple of little bits of information and your WordPress website is up and running. And what I do like is if you are new to working with WordPress, on Kinsta, you get this little checklist that pops up when you create your site that'll take you through some of the best practices and things you may need to know to get up and running fully using WordPress. It's a nice little useful piece of information. Now, if you also need live help, you can do that simply by clicking on the option in the bottom corner and you speak to human beings. It's quick and easy, and help and support is one of those key things that is generally often overlooked, especially by new users. There's going to be a time where you are going to need to have help and support, and having it available 24/7 and speaking to human beings is very, very important. So check that out. So now that our site has been created on Kinsta, let's take a quick look around the dashboard at some of the options you may find useful. If we come back into the main dashboard itself, you can see the site is currently being created, but we've got a breakdown of our recent activity and notifications. Can be useful, especially if you're working with multiple people. You can see what's been done at any point. So that's pretty useful. But what's more useful is what we see underneath, which is our WordPress analytics. This will give us an overview of the key things to do with our site, like our unique visits, our bandwidths being used, the CDN usage, and so on. So when you set a site up, if you want to check this information out, you've got it all here. As you can see, obviously, we've just set the site up. So there's been minimal information, but you can see that we've got the number of days that we've got in this month, the visits, the CDN usage, the disk usage. We can dig deeper into this analytical information and get a much better breakdown. Again, we don't have any data at this point in time, but as that flows in, you're going to see that arrive here. So that's kind of useful to have all this information here, so your bandwidth and everything, so you can just make sure as you get in through your monthly allowance, how much you're using, and those kinds of things. Very simple and easy. So now that our site has been created, we can now dig a little deeper into that as well. So let's come over into our website, and you can see this breaks things down now all on the left hand side, so we can access our caching, our analytics, add-ons, plugins and themes and so on. So you can use this as a kind of like centralized dashboard for your site. And with one site it's relatively easy, but when you have more sites come on board, then having this gives you access and a lot more control without having to sort of log in and log out of every single individual site. Some useful things inside here. So you can see that we've got our CDN and our edge caching is set up. It gives us information about the actual site itself, the IP address and so on for it. Don't worry about this. This will be gone by the time you see this video, so none of this information will be easily accessible to anybody. Don't worry about that. But you can see we can use SFTP or SSH to log into our site if we want to. We can also disable this functionality. Your database access, your reverse proxy, PHP for performance and so on. You can transfer your site, reset it, or delete it from here. But that's cool. Let's jump into backups though, because this is something that I think you need to set up right at the beginning when your site is being created, because you've got it running then, and as you make changes, especially during the development cycle, it's handy having those backups in place. So what we can do is, you can see backups will automatically back up every single day. You can set up hourly, you can set a manual, system generated, external, and you can download the options. So if you prefer to take your backups off-site, you can do that by connecting it up to either AWS or Google Cloud, and you can then push your backups over there. So it gives you an extra level of redundancy, something I would recommend anyway, because getting them off your hosting account, having an additional backup somewhere else is always useful, just in case something happens and you need to get it from somewhere outside of your hosting account. If you want to create a manual backup, you can do that from here as well. So all we need to do is click on Backup Now. You can see we can add a backup note if we want to. We'll just call this Clean Site Install and create a backup. This shouldn't take too long because, well, there's nothing on our site. It's a basic, clean, vanilla copy of WordPress. And as you can see, Job done. It's there. And we can choose to restore this as well if we want to, very easily. And we can have 5 manual backups stored at any one time. Want to jump into your tools side of things? You can see we've got a bunch of options inside here as well, some security options and things like that. So for example, you can enable forced HTTP, so any pages you may transition over, and this can happen when you migrate a site. You may have some issues where not all pages have the HTTPS enabled. Well, you can do this and it'll force it over there if you need to. Check out your plugins and your themes so you can see exactly what's installed, whether it's up to date and so on your website. Pretty cool. You can also check out any installed themes you have, and you can set up automatic updates as well. You've got some add-ons inside here, so additional disk space, premium staging environments, and so on. So if you need more disk space, you can access it inside here. Jumping into caching, you can see we've got a couple of different caching options. You've got edge caching, CDN, server caching, and Redis. Again, you can set up what you want. By default, you've got various different caching features enabled, the CDN and edge caching by default, but you can control that here should you want to or need to. Now, another cool feature is the APM feature, which is your application performance monitoring. And what this will do is this will monitor your site and find anything that may be slowing it down. Great if you want to see what's causing problems, slowing your site loading times down, maybe affecting your SEO scores and so on. You can enable that inside here and have this monitor your website. So once you enable it, you've got a couple of options because this can affect the performance of your website. So you can set this to 2 up to 24 hours. Let's say we'll check every 12, enable monitoring and let that run. And you see this will then come back and show us any issues we have on both transactions, WordPress, database or external sources. So we can check to see if there's any reasons causing problems with our site slowing down. So I think that kind of covers off a lot of what's included inside the Kinsta dashboard. We'll come back a little later when we migrate the site in and take a look at setting that side of things up. But for now, that's everything I wanted to kind of cover here. Should give you enough information to make a more informed decision about whether Kinsta is the right option for you. And you can use the link in the description down below to check out the current pricing and current features, offers and availability. Check that out. So for our WooCommerce store, we're going to be using Blocksy as the backbone for this, the design and all those kinds of things. The reason being is Blocksy ships with an awful lot of great features for absolutely zero cost. If you want more, there's a pro version, and we will take a look at some of the options on why you may want to use this for your online store using WooCommerce, because it does bring a lot of useful features without having to install a bunch of different plugins. But that's totally optional. So what we're going to do in this portion of the video is we're going to install this, get the basics set up, and I'm going to take you through and show you how you can at least hit the ground running with some of the basics you need for WooCommerce. So we'll jump over into our freshly installed copy of WordPress, and we're going to go into the appearance section and into themes. From here, we're going to add a new theme. We're going to come over and search for Blocksy. Once we found that, we're simply going to click install. Once that's installed, we'll activate it. And then we'll be prompted to install the Blocksy companion. Now you do need to install this. It's a plugin that opens up additional functionality that is needed to be able to get the most out of using Blocksy. So let's install that. Once installed, we're then taken over to all the options we have as part of Blocksy. As you can see, we've got a couple of tabs here, the home, start the site extension, and so on. So inside here, you can start to customize various different aspects, and we will take a look at some of the customization options in a moment. But before we do, we're going to use one of their starter sites to hit the ground running. We can use this as a great starting point, and then we can customize and tweak to get closer to what we actually want. But by doing this, we cut out an awful lot of the legwork. So first of all, let's find the e-commerce options. We'll come into all categories, we'll choose e-commerce. And from there, you can see we have a bunch of starter sites. One of the things I truly appreciate about Blocksy is the fact that they do have some really solid design starter sites, and we can leverage the power that we have there by choosing one. So a lot of these are pro starter sites. In other words, you need the pro account to get access to them. But in all honesty, we just want to have a starting point. So it doesn't really matter too much which we choose, but obviously find something that's close to the kind of end result that you're looking to achieve. So let's scroll through until we find one that kind of comes close to what I'm looking for. I want to sell kind of online technical gadgets, those kinds of things. So this gadget store looks pretty good to me. You can preview this, and when we hover over, you can see it's available for Gutenberg and Elementor. So if you prefer Gutenberg, working inside the native functions you have as part of WordPress, you can stay closer to core by using that. However, if you want something that is incredibly well supported and lots of tutorials and help and guides out there, Elementor may be the option you want to choose. For this example, we're going to stick to Gutenberg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click import. That will then ask me, do you want to install a child theme? I will say yes, because a child theme gives us the ability that if we make changes to the design and various different aspects in a more intermediate level, probably beyond what I want to cover in this video, but it's good to have it anyway, we can make those changes to the child theme, and then when Blocksy is updated, it won't affect those changes we make. So I would say best practice, install a child theme. Choose next. We can then pick whether we want Gutenberg or Elementor. We'll say we want Gutenberg and click next. Then we can choose what plugins do we want to install. So you can see Stackable, Gutenberg Blocks, which is the free version, which allows us to design our pages and so on. WP Forms, which is used for the contact form. If you have a different form plugin you want to use, simply uncheck that option and then choose what you want later on. Then WooCommerce, obviously we want to install that, and alongside installing that, it'll also do all the setup and configuration for various different aspects. We'll still have some steps to do, and I'll cover most of those in this video too. Once we're happy, we'll choose next. Then we can choose if we want to set up the options, any additional widgets, and add the content in, part of the design. I would say yes, because it gives you a good starting point. Again, it's entirely up to you. And we're going to say it's a clean install. So if we've tested any other ones out, it's going to wipe those out and just install what we need for this particular design. So we'll choose install. We'll give it a few moments to let it go through and install everything and set everything up. And then we'll take a quick look at our store. And after about a minute, you can see we now have our site set up. We can customize it, or we can view the site. Let's view our site and take a quick look. So as you can see, it is a great looking site. We've got a nice looking design, which we easily just change the images, the products and things like that out to customize this to what we want. If we hop into one of the products, again, you can see it's a really nicely designed site. I think it's just a great starting point. Then when you want to add a product, you can add it to your cart and go through the whole checkout process, which again is one of those things that I think is really nicely done inside Blocksy. Let's jump in. You can see we've got our cart, proceed to checkout, and we've got a great looking checkout all ready for us to add in our shipping details and our payment details and so on. So now we've seen what we've got to work with. Let's jump into the dashboard and take a look at some of the options we have to set this up to make it work the way that we want. So now that we've got our starter site set up, we do have some remedial work we need to do to make sure that our store is operational. Things like adding in the payment gateway options, shipping, and so on. So let's handle that next. To do that, we simply come over into WooCommerce and down into settings. From here, you can see we've got a bunch of different tabs with different options. So first of all, let's put our store address in, because obviously we want to have some information about where our store is located. So I'm going to put some fictitious details in here. Now, one thing that is important when you're setting all your options up here is the general options for your selling locations. Now, I'm based in the UK and I want to make sure that I'm only actually shipping and selling to the UK. It just makes life a lot easier. Obviously, your mileage may vary here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we don't want to sell to all countries. We want to sell to specific countries. Then we can choose the country. We'll choose the UK. Then you see the shipping locations, ship to all countries you sell to. So that will kind of marry up with what we have where we choose where we want to sell to specific countries. But there are options available to ship to all countries and so on. I'm going to say only to ship the ones I sell to. Default customer region, you can set that up if you want to as well. We're going to say shop country region. So in other words, it's the same as the shop that we've got, the UK in this example. Then you've got some other options. If you're a tax-based business, you're going to want to enable the tax rates and calculations. In this example, I'm not going to use that, but you can simply set up the tax rate you want to use inside the tax settings. In the UK, 20% for VAT. That's basically should be it. You can enable coupons, calculate coupon codes, discounts sequentially. Again, read the options here and choose what applies to you. Then if we come down, you can see the currency options. Now, obviously, this is set to the United States. So you want to change that over to be the UK. We'll choose GBP. And then you can customize the currency position and so on, depending upon the country. This is all perfectly fine for me. So we've got the basics set up inside here. Let's hit Save Changes. Next up, we want to jump over to the Payments module. We'll come back to shipping in a moment. Come into Payments. And inside here, you've got options to specify how you want to get paid. Most of the common ones are going to be things like PayPal, Stripe, and so on. There are other payment options available. Some of these may incur costs depending upon what you want to set up. But for our example, we want to set things up to test things out. So we're going to take offline payments. But once you enable things like PayPal and so on, you simply have to put in the relevant details, which PayPal or Stripe or whatever will supply you with, things like your email address and so on. Set those up. If you like a video covering that, let me know in the comment section down below and I can create a video if enough people are interested. For this example though, we want to test things out. We're going to say take offline payments. We're going to say cash on delivery and enable that. And that's now set up a payment gateway. So at least we can test out the whole checkout process. But like I say, if you want to set up additional ones, choose the one that's relevant to you, add in the applicable details, and you should hit the ground running. It's all pretty simple and straightforward. Next up, we're going to need to handle shipping. So let's come back out of this. Let's go to the shipping tab. I'm going to show you some basics of shipping. Now, I've got a dedicated shipping video, and if you want to check that out, you can link that in the corner and in the description down below. It's going to tell you exactly how to get this all set up. I'm going to do this relatively quickly to show you some basics to get you to hit the ground running. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a shipping zone. So we're going to click to add a shipping zone. We're going to call this UK shipping. This is kind of like a catch-all name. You can have multiple shipping methods inside this. So our zone regions, again, we're going to just set this up to be to specific regions. We only want this to be the UK. So we're going to select that from our drop-down list. And as you can see, it pulls it in based upon the settings we set up inside general. So that makes our lives a lot easier. Then we're going to add a shipping method. So we're going to add two shipping methods here. We're going to set up free shipping and we're going to set up an expedited shipping just to kind of demonstrate how this would work. So let's add a shipping method. We'll choose free shipping to start off with and click continue. We're going to set the name free shipping is fine. We're going to put in brackets 7 to 10 days because this is going to take longer. So therefore it might prompt them into going for the paid shipping. And you can set a requirement if you want to here. So you can have valid free shipping coupon, minimum order amount, and so on. We're going to leave this to no requirements. So anybody can choose this. It just takes longer to get to them. And we'll say create and save. We now have our first shipping method set up. Let's add another shipping method. This time we're going to choose a flat rate and click continue. So we're going to say, this is our expedited shipping in 1 to 3 days. You can choose whether this is taxable. So if you have set tax up and you have tax being applied to your shipping payments, you can set that up inside here. We're going to say none in this example, and then we're going to set our value for how much it costs them. So we're going to say, it's going to cost them $9.99 to ship it faster. So we'll say create and save. We now have two shipping methods set up underneath our UK shipping zone. So that's our shipping setup, our payment setup. And like I say, if you want more details about getting a little bit more granular with how you can set up the whole shipping side of things, check out the video. It goes into a lot more details. Okay, so there's two of the kind of main things we need to have set up already handled. Let's check them out to make sure they're all working correctly. Let's visit our store one more time and let's add a product to our cart. Let's say add these AirPods. Let's go and take a look at our cart. So we'll say view our cart. You see everything is inside here, including the totals and so on. You can calculate your shipping from here, or we can proceed to the checkout. And as you can see, we now have our cash on delivery as our payment method and our shipping options for free shipping 7 to 10 days or our expedited shipping. If we choose expedited shipping, our price is updated accordingly. And now we can go through and we can put in our name and our details and complete our order. And because we've got cash on delivery set up for our payment method, we can test this out internally without having to worry about taking payments and so on. Or you could obviously use PayPal or Stripe and set up a sandbox there and then use that to be able to do the same kind of thing with some fictitious card details. Again, totally up to you how you'd like to proceed. And I would recommend doing that when you move over to a live payment processor like PayPal or Stripe. Now, there's lots more things you could do inside here for customizing this with your accounts and your emails and so on. But again, most of these are perfectly fine out of the box and you can easily go in and take a look at them and make changes where you feel is necessary. For example, if we come into emails, you see all the different emails are set up inside here and you can choose the manage option and you can customize that, including the email, send a test email, change the color schemes to be more on point with your branding and so on. None of this is rocket science. It's all pretty simple and self-explanatory. And I would 100% recommend you go through the various different options inside here to familiarize yourself with them. But once you've kind of made these changes and you set things up at the beginning, there's no real reason to have to come back in and make any changes further on down the line. Okay, now, so you can see we've got some additional steps we still need to carry out when it comes to working with WooCommerce. So let's take a quick look at those before we move on then to start customizing and changing the way that our store looks. So we'll choose the continue setup option. That will kind of take us back into the little wizard that we would have had at the beginning. I'm going to uncheck this option. I don't want it to have my details. For this example, let's just say skip guided setup because only a couple of steps left. Choose our region. Click go to my store. That's now going to tweak any final things it thinks it needs. And then we've got a couple of things we can go through. So as you can see, this takes us back into that kind of stages of the things that have to be done. We've already done the customize your store, add the products and get paid. We've already handled those. Collect sales taxes. Is this something you do? If it is, then you can make those changes here. However, if you don't, you can basically turn those off. So things to do next. Let's say we don't want any of that. We're going to click the three dots and say hide this. Set up a refund and returns page policy to boost your store credibility. I would recommend you do that. And the nice thing with Blocksy, when using our starter sites, it's already created one. So you could simply come in and make changes to it should you need to. You can see we can edit the page. That will then take us into one that Blocksy's created for us. Tweak this as you see fit. Obviously speak to someone that is good with the legal side of things. If you are making changes, you want to make sure you've got everything covered for the country that you're actually operating out of. But for this example, that looks fine. We're going to hit publish, jump back out of this, and simply go back into WooCommerce. So that side of things has basically been handled. We don't want any jetpack rubbish. We're going to say no thanks to that. And we've got our basic info here. And if you're happy with all this, you see collect sales tax. We can click on it. As you can see, you can choose various different options. I'm saying I don't charge sale tax, but if you want to set this up manually, you can do. In this example, we're not charging it, so we get rid of that. That checks that off. And then we've got to launch our store. Now, obviously, we're still in development at the moment, but once you're ready, you can come back in, launch your store, and it will get rid of this coming soon, and it will kind of activate the store and push your site live. So there's the basics of setting everything up inside WooCommerce. If you want to come in and take a look at your products, you can come into all products. And there's all the products we currently have set up, installed inside this demo starter site. You can easily come in, edit one of these, make changes to it. And if you're new to working with WooCommerce, it's relatively simple and straightforward how you work. And again, I've covered all of these different options in dedicated videos, which I will link to in the description down below. But you can make changes to the product name, the product description. You can choose the type of product it is, whether it's a simple product, grouped, external, variable products, and so on. Now, if you are working with variable products, and especially if you're working with things like have colors, sizes, and so on, then Blocksy Pro opens up some additional functionality that could be incredibly useful to you. And again, like I say, we'll take a quick look at those a little later. But you can make changes inside here. If it's a downloadable product, you're selling digital products, you can set it up inside here as downloadable. Set as a virtual product if it doesn't physically exist, so it doesn't have to be shipped. Get rid of all those kinds of things. You can manage inventory inside here. You can add SKU codes if you are tracking stock management. All these things can be handled out of the box. As you can see, we can choose how things are displayed. So if something is out of stock, in stock, out of stock, on back order, and so on. So you can set it up inside here. You want to track your stock, you can click this, choose the quantity, and then you can see we can then choose how we allow back orders. Low stock threshold, you can set that, whether it's the number, whether it's a site-wide kind of setting, and so on. So pretty cool. Your shipping options then, if you want to set shipping classes, so you can choose the option from here. We've got basic shipping already set up, so we don't really need to worry about this. Any linked products, if you want to connect this up and have cross-sells and upsells and things like that, you can set up what products you specifically want to link to inside here, and you simply start typing something in. So for example, we start typing air, we've got AirPods, we can click and we can start adding in our upsells. And this will be handled during the sales and checkout process, and you'll have this sort of upsell products which are going to help people maybe add a few more things to their shopping cart. Attributes is more to do with products that have various different variations, things like sizes, colors, and so on. Again, like I say, I've got a dedicated video on this, which will be much more beneficial than me going into huge amounts of details and have a 5-hour-long tutorial. And advanced if you want to have purchase notes, the menu order, and whether you want to enable or disable reviews for this product. Those options are here. And then finally, we've got things like the product short description, choosing what category it sits in, adding the images you want, and if you want to add additional images to have a product gallery, you can do that here. And if you want to use tags, you can do that and add brands in as well. So again, one of those things that all the options, should you need them, are here. You can tweak products that are existing to see what differences it makes, and then start adding products in as you're ready. We'll hit update on here because we made a couple of changes and the product is now ready to go. So now that we've seen how to set up products and how to add things in like our payment and shipping and so on, the next thing we need to do is take a look at how we start to customize our overall design. Our starter site looks great, but we don't want it to look exactly the same as that. We want to customize it to our own way, add our own colors, branding, and so on in. To do that, we simply come over to the Appearance tab and come down into Customize. That will open up the WordPress customizer that gives us a huge amount of options on changing the way that this various different aspects of the design will look. So if we take a look inside here, we've got lots of different options. Now, personally, I prefer to work in a dark mode, so I'm going to switch this over, and you can see we now get a dark mode. So things are broken down into logical sections. So general, headers, footers, sidebars, and so on. One of the key reasons why I recommend Blocksy, the free version, if you're on a budget, is because you're not restricted with the header and footer builders. We have full control over so many options. You can customize this to your heart's content. Let me show you. You can come into the header and you can click the little expand option, and that will open up the editor. Alternatively, you can come onto your page and you can go to various different parts of your design and simply select it and make changes. So for example, we come up to the main row at the top, click, that opens up the same set of options, and inside here now we can start to customize the design. So at the moment we've got our logo on the left hand side, our main menu in the middle, and then we've got search, account and cart options on the right hand side. Well, obviously our store's not going to be called Gadget, so we'd want to change that. It's easy. You simply click on the logo option, and that will then expand the options on the left hand side, so you can change the logo for the light mode, the dark mode, transparent versions, all those kinds of options. You can set the logo height. You can customize this for your mobile devices, for your desktop, for your tablet. Do you want to use a site title? You can do that. There's so many different options we can choose inside here to customize all of this. And then finally, you can go to the design tab. And inside here, you can adjust things like your margins and so on. And again, you can control this based upon what device is being viewed on. Want to change your menu structure? Simple. Come over, click on menu 1, and now we can customize the look of this. So we can select our menu. Now, by default, this is using the basic one that's been set up. However, if you have custom menus, simply create those custom menus and then reference them inside here to add those in to your design structure. It is that simple. Then you can customize the look and feel of this. So you can see we're using type 1. We can click on type 2. It gives us a slightly different variation on this. Type 3. Highlights the background. You can see we get a hover effect on there. Type 4, slightly different effect again with sort of a little animation. Nice thing with this is you can still customize all of these as well. So you can customize the item height. So you can see we customize that, and the little lines then they become a little lower. Change this design over to a different one. Again, the same kind of thing. So we can adjust these options. We can stretch the menu, collapse non-fitting items. Then we've got our menu options for our mobile. You kind of get the idea what you can do here. Come into design, for example, and we can customize the typography. We can customize the colors, the background colors, the border radiuses. Same thing then for our mobile version. So there's so many different options here just for the menu setup. Come back out of this. You want to come back in and choose what goes where. You can simply drag things over. So let's say, for example, next to the logo, we want to put socials to make it look particularly ugly. Drop that inside there. We now get a bunch of social icons. If you don't want to have them there, you want to have another menu above it, for example, drop those in the above section, and you can see now we get a new section at the top. Drop those over onto the right-hand side, makes a little bit more sense, and you can see now we've got that inside there. You want to change the settings for this, select it, and come over, and you can adjust things inside here. So we can say, let's make the height smaller. Come into a design, for example, you can customize this, set your background colors, borders, shadows, and so on. So you may want to put a border on. So say you want a bottom border, added a border in. You kind of get the idea how this all works. If you want to get rid of anything, simply click on the X and it's gone. And it also closes up the menu structure. So that's how the sort of header works. The footer is fundamentally the same. Click the footer, and if we scroll to the bottom of our page, you can see there's our footer in 4 columns, and there's our 4 columns. There's our copyright information at the bottom. Click on it, make changes inside there. So you can see everything is really simple and straightforward and pretty logical and intuitive. Now, moving on, we've got things like our colors. So if you want to globally change your colors, we can select the color option here, and you can see there's our color palette. So we can change our color palette up here. We can also click the advanced option, and you can save your color palette, add a new color. Go to color palettes, choose a different color palette. Let's say we want to have this sort of blue and red. Choose that option, and now everything is updated accordingly. You want to make a manual change, simply click on the color and change it. So let's say we don't want this red, we want to make it maybe, I don't know, let's go for purple to make it particularly ugly. And as you can see, now we have that purple color, and that will apply anywhere those colors are referenced. These are global colors that make a global change to our overall design. But we can still change things on a specific instance by instance basis, as you've seen by going to the design tab for any of the things we're changing inside the design itself. This, like I say, is such a powerful way of being able to design and customize and tweak. You visually see the changes on screen as you're making them, and you can make design decisions a lot easier. So come back out of your colors. If you want to change your typography, you can do that inside here as well. So you can see, set your base font, your headings, your buttons, your quotes, your pull quotes, and so on. So you can really customize the overall typography. So we changed our default system default to something else like Verdana, for example, or Trebuchet. Choose that option, and anywhere that references it then will have that change taking place. So you can see how buttons change and so on. Let's put it back to system default so it doesn't look particularly ugly. Come back out of here. But let's take a look at the WooCommerce options, because these operate in fundamentally the same way. So whatever you kind of set up inside here is going to be applicable to your post types and so on. The only difference is we're working in WooCommerce right now. So let's come into products, for example. This is our product listing section. So this is basically our product archives. Let's open this up. And now we can see we've got some additional options. So if we take a look, you can see under the general setting, for example, we can customize things like the columns and rows. So at the moment, we've got 3 columns. Let's say we want to set it to 4. Bang, there you go, 4 columns. Want to set it to 2 because want to feature the products more heavily? Not a problem. You can do that here. Simple as that. Let's set it back to 3 though. Then you can change the design. So we can use this first type 1 design or choose type 2 design, which is slightly different. As you can see, we've got a slightly different layout. And again, we can still customize these options. We can control spacing, whether it's spacing above and below and so on. Come back up to your design. You can see we've got various different options inside here. So a results count, product sorting, sidebar if we've got one, your pagination, product catalog, and so on. Now, anywhere you see this little pop-out arrow, it tells us there's more information, more options available there. So let's come up to our page title, which is what you can see here with the product section. We can enable or disable this particular function, and you can see that we'll get rid of if we don't want it, but let's re-enable it. Let's click on the little pop-out arrow to see what additional options are there. So now you can see we can choose between 2 different designs. So this first one, which kind of gets rid of the background color and so on, or we can set this second one. So this is picking up our global styles, but obviously we can override that should we want to. Then you can choose what's actually going to be seen inside here. So breadcrumbs, title, description, and so on. The little eye icon will show or hide it. So if we click on that, that now hides our breadcrumbs option. Click it again to bring it back. Click the drop down arrow to make changes inside here. So for example, our title, we can change the spacing, the heading tag. If we had a description apply, we can set up the visibility for where and when this will show up. You can also do things like change the alignment. So for example, if we want to align this to the left, click on that. Want to align it to the right, click on that. Want to keep it the center, no problem. Adjust your vertical alignment. All those options are here. You can also customize the container width. Background image, if you want to apply an image to this as opposed to just a color, you can do that. Again, just tons and tons of options. Now let's take a look at a product itself. So let's click on a product so we can see our page. Let's come back out of this. And this time, I'm going to come back out one more time. I'm going to go into our single product. So again, we now have the settings for our single product. So if we want to, we can make this narrow. In this example, it looks particularly ugly, but you can do it if you want to. Normal width, which is what we had originally. If you want to have a sidebar, you can set sidebars up on here, and then you can choose what will go into the sidebar itself with the sidebar settings. So let's put this back to what it was. You've also got options then whether you want this to be wide or boxed. Now, boxed will basically just sort of box it in, and depending on the color scheme you choose, it'll put a color outside it and so on. Set it back to wide. Again, all the options here for the different kinds of devices that you're viewing it on. If you want to customize the page elements then, your product tabs, relate and upsells and so on, all those are here. So for example, let's open up our related and upsells. You can see we've got this set to be 4 columns. Let's set that to be 3, for example. You can see that now shows a bigger version of the image. Come into your design if you want to, adjust things inside here. Hopefully you can kind of see just how much control you have here over all of the settings and the options inside Blocksy itself. And remember, this is the absolutely free version. It's mind-blowing how much information you can control and customize inside here. Now, if you want to, you can customize things like your site identity, your menus, your widgets, your homepage settings, and so on. But I think we've covered more than enough inside here. Let's hit publish to commit any of those changes that we've made. So now we've seen how we can make global changes to our design. What about the individual pages if we want to make changes there? Well, let's go and take a look at that next. So I've come into my pages section inside WordPress. And inside here, all the pages that have been created either by WordPress itself, by WooCommerce, or by the starter site are all listed inside here. So let's go and take a look at probably the first page you're going to want to edit, which would be the home page. So we can come into our home page and we can choose to edit this. And depending upon whether you've chosen to use Gutenberg or Elementor or any of the other tools that are available in different starter sites, will kind of dictate what you'll see here. We went for Gutenberg, and as part of that, it installed an additional plugin for us. So in this instance, it's installed Stackable. Now, Stackable is a plugin that opens up more possibilities when it comes to working with Gutenberg itself. So it's close to native, but it gives us a bunch more functionality. And all the pages you can see have been built using Stackable. If we take a look at this, you can see we've got our big hero featured image, which is the sort of main image on our home page, where we can simply click inside and start making changes. And the nice thing about working with something like Stackable is we just got a bunch more options than native Gutenberg. So if you want to start making changes, it's relatively simple and straightforward. Let's expand the actual list view out so we can see exactly what's going on. So this makes it so much easier now to select anything. So if we want to select our text, we can select our text. Want to select your heading, we can select our heading. And as you can see, that opens up a lot of options then over on the panel on the right-hand side. So we can control various different aspects, and everything is broken down in Stackable into layout, style, and advanced. We can click on any of these tabs and we can adjust things inside here. So things like your alignment. So if you're working with an RTL language, you can easily set this up to be right aligned, center aligned, left aligned. You get the idea. Your spacing and so on, there's a bunch of spacing options inside here. So you can already see if you've worked with Gutenberg, most of these options are not available to you, or at least the more intermediate advanced options. Come into style, for example, we can change the content. We can set things up to use different HTML tags so you can make sure everything is semantically correct. Your typography settings, so we can click on here and all our typography settings are available. You'll notice that we're using the theme default for our font family, so this is picking up what's inside the customizer, so we don't have to worry about matching everything up. It's kind of using it anyway. And then you can come down, you've got things like your background, your borders, shadows, bottom lines, and so on. And you can come into advanced, and inside here, there's an awful lot more options available to you. So for example, if you want to change anything else, we can simply come in and make those changes. So for example, you can see we have this 4-column layout. Well, we can select that 4-column layout. We can expand things out from here. There's our columns. We can come in. We can start making changes to that text. We can adjust things. We can add our own content. We can do what we need to do to customize every aspect of our overall design. Now, there are tons of tutorials on how to use Gutenberg, Stackable, or whatever tool you choose to work with, including Elementor. So I don't want to go into too much detail here. I want to kind of just like show you how you can use this to just kind of get started, have something up and running super quickly, make changes as you need to, delete what you don't want, add in what you do want, and kind of customize the overall pages and design. Now, as I said earlier on in the video, there's a lot of additional options we can add in to Blocksy, some add-ons that are free, and also take a look at the premium or pro features. So let's come back into Blocksy. Let's go over to extensions this time. And things are broken down into the free extensions and the pro extensions. At the moment, there's only a couple of free extensions, things like cookie consent. And if you enable this option, you click on it, you can customize it. And that will then show you what this is going to look like. So we can, again, using the customizer, customize how this looks. So we want to go across the bottom. Cool, we can do that. Adjust what it says inside there. So it's a pretty simplistic example, but you can use the options inside Blocksy should you want to. Again, let's hit publish and come out of this. Then if you want things like newsletter subscriptions, you can do that. Product reviews, if you want to enable product reviews, you can do that as well. And things like trending posts. So there's a couple of nice little useful features there that are included for absolutely zero cost. But if you want more, there's two ways to approach it. You can find free plugins and add those in. And the problem with that is you have multiple plugins to maintain and update, and there's no guarantee that they're going to work smoothly and perfectly inside Blocksy itself. However, if you want a much more streamlined approach, you may want to take a look at the pro version of Blocksy. For example, if you are working with WooCommerce like we are in this example, the Shop Extra options are pretty expansive. And again, these replace quite a lot of very common plugins you may want to add in. So we can take a look at what options are available, but I don't have the pro version installed, so I can just quickly just show you what they are. So we'll say Shop Extra, we'll choose the option, and as you can see, there's a bunch of options inside here. Each one of these would generally be an additional plugin inside WordPress. And as you can see, there's a lot. But the ones that I think are probably the most useful. Quick View is super useful. This gives you the ability to, instead of going and looking at the product itself, click Quick View, have a little pop-up, little modal window that has details. They can find out more, add to the cart, job done. Filters. Well, as its name suggests, a good store has filters included in it that allow you to filter the products and so on. So if you have more than a handful of products, you're probably going to want to add filters in. And this is a good way of doing it and giving you more control over how it all works. If you want to have wish lists, you can add that in as well. But the ones I think are probably the most useful for people that are selling a broader range of products, especially things like clothing and so on, are things like the variation swatches. This allows you to have a visual way of seeing your variations for your colors and so on, as opposed to just having the words in there in a drop-down list. Makes it more attractive. You don't have to use it. You can still get away with doing the basics inside WooCommerce for zero cost whatsoever. This just gives you a kind of nicer, more professional way of working. And again, there's more options inside here, things like size guides, product brands, custom tabs, custom thank you pages, advanced reviews, and so on. Check it out, have a look for yourself. And that's just the shop extra. There's also things like post extra. If you want to work with dynamic data, so for example, things like advanced custom fields or MetaBox, those kinds of tools, this opens up a ton more options. Again, we can open this up, choose the option, and you can see this allows us to add things in like read time, add dynamic data in so you can customize things, post filters, taxonomy customization, and it's all done inside the editor. It's all done in a very, very visual fashion. Now, what I'm going to show you next is not something you need to do with your online store, but there are going to be times when you start to sell products, especially if you have a quite expansive product range or you're selling products that you produce and create yourself, you're going to need to offer some kind of support. This is where another free plugin could be super useful to give you a kind of nice support portal that gives a really good user experience for anybody that's actually using your store. For this, I would recommend taking a look at Fluent Support. I'm only going to show you the free version. There's a premium version which has more functionality should you want it. But I think to start off with, you can get away with the free version and get a lot of really good support options integrated into your store by making it nice and simple and straightforward. So we're going to add that free plugin by coming into the plugin section, doing a search for Fluent Support. There's a bunch of Fluent products and they all integrate nicely with each other. So if you want to expand your store, maybe have a CRM for email marketing and so on, have support, all those kinds of things, even a community if you want to, and they all integrate and talk nicely to each other. But we're going to, like I say, keep it super simple with the support option. So let's add in Fluent Support. Once installed, we'll activate it. And we now have Fluent Support installed. There's a couple of things we're going to need to do to get this up and running and set up. First thing is we're going to need to create a page that is a kind of like support page. So to do that, let's come into our pages, add a new page. I'm going to call this support, hit publish, and we now have our support page basically set up. Let's come back out of this and come into Fluent Support and into settings. Now there's a bunch of settings inside here and you can customize these should you want to. I'm going to show you the basics of what you're going to need to do to get this basically up and running, and then you can customize and tweak as you see fit based upon your specific requirements. But again, if you'd like a dedicated video on how to use Fluent Support and set everything up, let me know in the comments section down below. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the kinds of types of files that people can upload alongside any support request. So for this example, we don't want any of these. We're just going to say they can upload photos, and we can choose the maximum file size, the maximum number of uploads, and so on. We're also going to do things like delete all attachments on ticket close. And if you want to add anything in like custom registration fields, two-factor authentication, and so on, you can do. Then we're going to choose our support portal page. So we're going to just click this drop down. There's support what we just created. Once we've done that, we're going to grab this little short code and copy that. And we're going to scroll down and say save settings. Now let's just jump back into our page. Let's open our support page up, search the shortcode, and paste in our shortcode. Hit save, and we've now created the login section and our sort of support portal homepage. Now, if we take a look at this at the moment, you can see it gives me a message saying customer portal is only accessible by customers. Look like your support staff. In other words, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I can't actually view this content. However, if we copy this, open up an incognito window and paste that in, this is what our users are going to see. Now, obviously, we can customize this shortcode and make it look nicer and put some info on here, but we can have them simply log in, and once they're logged in, they'll get access to the support portal. So what I've done is I've now logged in as a user, and this is what you see for the support portal. When you log in, this will be associated with your account. So if you have support requests, in the same way as you've probably seen on any other website that has this kind of setup, all of your tickets will be available. And the nice thing with this is it means that you can keep track, and also as a shop admin, shop user, as a client, whatever it is, you can keep track from both sides. So let's create a ticket. What's this support ticket about? We say this is a technical error. We'll put details in. Want to attach a file? We can do that, and we can also set the priority. This is critical. We'll create our ticket, and there's our ticket set up. So now you can see there's our overall sort of support requests and so on. Now let's log back in as the admin and take a look at what this looks like from our side of things in the dashboard. So when we're in the dashboard, this is what we see. You can see technical error. If we click to open this up, there's our support request. We can now reply to this. We can associate it with other people. If we've got multiple people inside our business, dedicated support staff and so on, we can choose who actually gets access to it. All the information is here, critical, blah, blah, blah. Click on this, drop in our reply, and we'll say reply and close, or we can just say add reply if it's something we want more information on. We'll say reply and close. That's now been replied to, closed, and all set and sorted. So there's our ticket side of things. We've got a full support setup inside here and everything we need to do the basics. If we want to go further, we can take a look at the premium version, and obviously we can customize and tweak this and do a lot more with it, with all the different options and settings. But this, as you can see, in a matter of 30 seconds to a minute, we've got it set up inside our site, and we can offer online support. We've seen how to set up our hosting, how to set up WordPress, how to install WooCommerce, how to install Blocksy, customize it, use a starter site, customize pages, set up support, and we've basically got the good starting point for our online store. Now you can get stuck in and start customizing this to get exactly what you want out of it, with a bit more knowledge on how it can all be achieved. As always, all the applicable links for everything I've covered are in the description down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.